I thought we'd come on and talk about relationships, because as we're moving into the fifth dimension, we're all trying to get into our hearts more. And so the concept of what we know as love and our relationships is going to change. And so at the moment, I think there are three types of relationships that are present. And we have the karmic relationship, we have the soulmate relationship, and we have the twin flame relationship. A lot of talk about twin flames. So a quick overview of these is the karmic relationship is usually where people are resolving issues from past lives. So they're resolving things with one another. They're balancing, if one energy has been one way, then they're balancing it to another way. Some people see it as more like an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, or something like, if someone was cruel to someone, then they get a chance to be cruel to them. I don't quite see it like that, because we're all in patterns of involvement that are trying to take us out from a very baseline, a lower consciousness, into a higher one. So our understanding of karma and what that is, the lessons of who we are, I think it's more about that we are learning, yes, to balance the energy, to not come from two extremes, but more to balance it. So that's our karmic relationship. Our soulmate relationship, these are usually a little bit more harmonious, more pleasant. So with our soulmates, we usually have contracts at soul level before we're incarnated into our bodies, where we will agree with people to do different things. And sometimes these don't always have to be harmonious, but usually they are. When someone's really talking about a soulmate relationship in the truest sense, without the karmic debt situation that goes on in karmic relationships, usually it's harmonious, usually it's a support system. And you see it, there's a lot more sort of gentleness and understanding about the other person, and how they can help and support each other on their soul journey in this life. So a twin flame relationship is interesting, because it's like two sparks of the same energy that were created from the God source, or the goddess source, the oneness, at the same moment. So they were actually in wholeness, one being, one element of energy, or creative source energy, that were split. So they know each other intimately, because there is so much connection. It's like two halves that make a whole. And the twin aspect we're seeing much more of it now than we ever have done. And I believe that's because we're really beginning to integrate the masculine and feminine within us, and we are moving towards wholeness in the true sense of the word, where we are whole, completely whole and balanced. So a twin flame, usually this is how it looks. People, if you're lucky enough to meet your twin flame in this incarnation, because a lot of twin flames are not incarnated in the same incarnation. If you're lucky enough to meet your twin flame, then usually they come together, and very, very intense relationship with one another, usually has some sort of explosive quality that like blasts each other open, particularly in the heart chakra, can sometimes happen in other higher chakras, and that much light that comes in to open oneself actually has a huge effect on the person, both people, and usually one is more advanced and can cope with it, but the other usually cannot cope with it and becomes the runner. I mean, obviously there are a myriad ways of doing this, and it can people can take turns, but we get one that's the runner, usually, who cannot cope and has to go away and rebuild their fragmented parts of themselves to cope with the wholeness that they're being presented with in that relationship. Or you have the person who's sort of being left, who is mourning the loss of that person and that connection and that wholeness. A twin flame relationship really is a very, very intense dynamic, and it's one that needs a lot of balancing, a lot of energy, but it will accelerate your path to wholeness. It will, once you get that energy in harmony with one another, and then you're able to bring up the layers of toxicity that you might find within your bodies, within your consciousness, in your energy matrix. Once you are able to balance that energy that's throwing up, actually it becomes a much more harmonious relationship, and there is a true sense of total recognition on a soul level. So that also helps you advance yourselves as beings. So I would like to say here, there's no good or bad or better situation in relationships. It really is about your soul journey in this lifetime and what your soul has come and chosen to work. So if you're working at a twin flame level, you probably need to understand that process and work through how painful some of those aspects can be, so that you can get to really loving yourself and loving your partner and loving all things in the same expansiveness of the heart. If you're in a soulmate relationship, that is more of a cooperative, harmonious relationship, but it may not get you to the depth of a twin, but it will take you on a different journey, and it really depends on what your soul has come here to do and to learn in this lifetime, to learn cooperation and support, to learn that someone has got your back on a very deep level, and that you can live in harmony and through choice with another in a good relationship, a good, healthy, balanced relationship. It will throw up stuff, but it will throw up less than a twin flame, because a twin flame you'll be dredging through all the parts of yourself, because there's this mirror effect of total reflectivity as parts are coming in together, whereas soulmate is more a balanced harmony of working together. I mean, I quite like the yin yang symbol with that. There's more a working together sort of sense to it. Now, a karmic relationship, as you probably know, lots of people talk about these, is much more complex and sometimes not as pleasant or enjoyable. Usually the pattern I see with a karmic relationship is that people meet, they fall in love, they have all that excitement of meeting someone and falling in love and all that difference, and usually it's a bit like a lock and key effect, where you have this sort of receptors and they have that sort of receptors, and they meet and that works for them because there's a resonance. But the trouble we have here is then there becomes these cycles. After about 8 months to a year, the honeymoon period's over, and then we begin the dance where the shadow aspects come up, and we become locked in this sort of quite icky sort of feelings of trying to resolve things. Often we're not even conscious of what we're resolving. We can just feel like difficult feelings a lot and not really understand what they are. So the karmic relationships make up the majority of relationships. Usually there's some sort of power imbalance or power issues being resolved. Often it comes from the lower chakras, and there's a place for it, but you can actually have a choice to move through that learning as quickly or as slowly as you want, or as painfully or as non-painfully as you want. It's all up to how we process relationships and how we make sense of them. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful. I know I'm always on a journey. We're moving to like the heart space. Oh, I've got hearts too. Moving towards that, because we're moving into the 5th dimension, which is all going to be about coming from our hearts and that higher level of consciousness and interaction with each other and ourselves. So if you like what I do, please subscribe to the channel and listen to some other things I do, particularly around indigos and starseeds. And if you want to work with me, then I do a lot of work over the internet. So blessings to you, and have a nice day.